Welcome to the channel, The Nomis Hunter. And before you dismiss that jar of pennies sitting on your dresser or that handful of change rattling around in your car's cup holder, you need to hear this story, because what I'm about to reveal could literally change your financial future forever. And I'm not talking about finding a few extra dollars. I'm talking about a discovery that could make you $85 million richer. Yes, you heard that correctly. $85 million for a single penny. And this isn't some fantasy or clickbait. This is the documented value of one of the most extraordinary coins ever minted in American history. The legendary 1972 D1 cent piece that has collectors, investors, and everyday people scrambling through their old change with trembling hands and racing hearts. Now I know what you're thinking. How can a penny, something we barely even notice when it falls between our couch cushions, possibly be worth more than entire mansions, luxury yachts, and private islands combined? But stick with me, because the story behind this incredible coin will blow your mind. And here's the thing, this isn't the only valuable penny we're going to talk about today. Because after I reveal everything about this 1972 D masterpiece, I've got 5 more pennies to share with you, each one worth millions. And some of them might be even more shocking than this one. So you absolutely cannot click away, because the coin's coming up later in this video. Well, let's just say one of them has a valuation that will make your jaw hit the floor, and another has such a unique error that only a handful exist in the entire world. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's dive deep into this 1972 D phenomenon first. The year 1972 was a fascinating time in American numismatic history. The Denver Mint was operating at full capacity, striking hundreds of millions of pennies to meet the demands of a growing economy. Inflation was starting to rear its head. The Vietnam War was still consuming national attention, and people were using cash for virtually every transaction, which meant the mints were working overtime. But here's where things get interesting. During this massive production run, something went catastrophically wrong. Or perhaps I should say magnificently wrong, because errors in minting, while unfortunate for the U.S. Mint, are absolute gold for collectors. The 1972 D penny we're talking about today features what experts call a double die obverse error. But this wasn't just any doubling. This was a dramatic, spectacular doubling that's visible even to the naked eye. And when I say visible, I mean you can see the doubling on Lincoln's portrait, on the words "In God We Trust," on liberty, and on the date itself. It's like the die used to strike these coins had a ghostly second image slightly offset from the first, creating this stunning visual effect that makes the coin instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what to look for. But how does something like this even happen, you might wonder? Well, during the die-making process back in 1972, before modern computer-aided precision technology, the working dies were created by pressing a master hub multiple times into a blank die. And if the die shifted even slightly between impressions, or if the alignment was off by even a fraction of a millimeter, you'd get this doubling effect permanently imprinted into the die. And then every single coin struck with that flawed die would carry the same dramatic error, making them instant rarities. Instant collectible, instant trésor. Now the Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D mint mark below the date, produced billions of pennies in 1972, but here's the crucial detail that makes this particular error so valuable. The double die variety is extremely rare. We're talking about potentially only a few dozen to maybe a couple hundred examples ever created before the error was caught and the die was destroyed. And of those original strikings, how many survived? How many made it through decades of circulation without being damaged, corroded, lost, or accidentally spent? The answer is heartbreakingly few. And it's this scarcity, combined with the dramatic visual appeal and the historical significance, that drives the value into the stratosphere. Imagine being the person who first discovered one of these coins. Maybe it was a bank teller in Denver sorting through rolls of pennies in 1972, or perhaps it was a young collector going through pocket change with a magnifying glass. That moment of recognition, That electric shock of realization that they were holding something extraordinary, something that would become one of the most sought-after coins in American numismatics. That's the dream that keeps collectors searching. That's the hope. That makes people examine every single penny that passes through their hands. The condition of these coins matters tremendously. A circulated example with wear, scratches, and discoloration might still be worth hundreds of thousands or even millions, but a pristine, uncirculated example, one that went from the mint directly into a collector's hands and was immediately preserved in a protective holder. Now that where we see values reaching into the tens of millions. And the highest graded example, the absolute finest known specimen of this 1972 D-double die penny. That's the one carrying the jaw-dropping $85 million price tag. Professional grading companies like PCGS and NGC grade coins on a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being absolutely perfect and a 1972 D-double die in MS 68 or MS 69 condition, with brilliant red surfaces, sharp details, and zero imperfections, is essentially a numismatic unicorn. A coin so rare and so perfect that wealthy collectors will pay almost any price to own it, because they know that once it enters a serious collection, it might not become available again for decades, or maybe never again. In their lifetime, the auction history of these coins reads like a thriller novel. Back in the 1980s, when the variety was first being widely recognized, examples were selling for thousands of dollars, already a fortune for a penny. But as awareness grew, as more collectors entered the market, as the truly exceptional examples were locked away in prestigious collections, the prices began their relentless climb. By the 1990s, we were seeing five-figure sales, then six figures, then seven, and in recent major auctions, when a top-tier example comes to market, the bidding becomes fierce. You'll have phone bidders from around the world, anonymous collectors competing through intermediaries, museums and institutions trying to acquire specimens for their permanent displays, and the final hammer prices shatter previous records with stunning regularity. What makes this coin even more captivating is the human element. The stories of ordinary people finding these treasures. There are documented cases of individuals who inherited old coin collections from relatives and discovered in 1972 D-double die worth millions tucked away in a dusty album. Estate sales where sharp-eyed buyers spotted these coins mixed in with common change and paid pennies for what turned out to be a fortune. And even instances of metal detector enthusiasts finding these coins in old houses, beneath floorboards and walls, in places where someone stashed their pocket change decades ago and forgot about it. The grading process for such a valuable coin is incredibly rigorous. The coin must be authenticated by experts who verify that it's a genuine 1972 D-double die and not one of the many counterfeits that have appeared over the years. Yes, criminals have tried to fake these coins, creating artificial doubling or altering common 1972 D pennies to mimic the error, which is why authentication by reputable grading services is absolutely essential before any major transaction takes place. These services use high-powered microscopes, precise measurements, characteristic databases, and decades of expertise to confirm authenticity. And once authenticated and graded, the coin is sealed in a tamper-evident holder with a unique serial number, becoming an officially recognized treasure. For those of you watching right now, I want you to understand something crucial. If you have any pennies for 1972, especially ones from the Denver Mint with that D mark, you need to examine them carefully. Get yourself a decent magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe. Look at the date. Look at the lettering. Look at Lincoln's profile. Are there any signs of doubling? Does anything look slightly off or duplicated? Don't trust just your eyes. Do research. Compare your coin to known examples. Post clear photos in coin collecting forums, or better yet, consider sending suspicious coins to a professional grading service for evaluation. Because the difference between a common penny and an $85 million treasure could be hiding in plain sight in your possession right now. The 1972 deep double die has become a cultural phenomenon in the coin collecting world. It's featured in every major reference book. It's discussed endlessly on forums and social media. It appears in museum exhibits, and it represents the ultimate treasure hunt that anyone can participate in. You don't need to be wealthy to start looking. You don't need special connections or inside knowledge. You just need awareness, persistence, and maybe a bit of luck. And who knows, maybe the next record. Breaking discovery will be your story. Maybe you'll be the one finding yourself suddenly holding a coin worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. But here's something that will really get your heart racing. This 1972 deep double die penny isn't even the only incredibly valuable penny out there. Remember when I mentioned we'd be covering 6 different pennies today, each worth millions? Well, the next coin on our list is from 1985, also from the Denver Mint. And while I won't spoil the exact value just yet, let me tell you that it's another coin that has collectors in an absolute frenzy, and the error that makes it valuable is so subtle that most people would never notice it, which means millions of these could have been spent without anyone realizing what they had. And then there's a penny from 2002 that has a minting mistake so rare that it's valued at millions and will. Get to a 1997 penny with its own fascinating story, a 1996 D that will shock you, and finally, relatively recent 2018 D penny that proves you don't need to find ancient coins to strike it rich. Modern errors can be worth fortunes too. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because what's coming next will give you even more reasons to check every single penny you encounter. And who knows, by the end of this video, you might be running to check your change jar with a whole new perspective on what those humble copper coins might really be worth. Next, 1985 D1 cent. And if you thought that 1972 D penny was remarkable, wait until you hear about this next treasure that has collectors paying $39 million for what most people would consider just another ordinary penny from the mid-1980s. The 1985 D1 cent piece represents one of the most dramatic examples of how a tiny minting error can transform pocket change into a life-changing fortune. And what makes this particular coin even more intriguing is that 1985 was relatively recent in numismatic terms. This wasn't some ancient relic from the early days of American coinage. This was minted during many of our lifetimes. During the Reagan administration, when MTV was revolutionizing music, when personal computers were just beginning to enter homes, when people were still using payphones and carrying actual cash for everyday purchases, which means these coins circulated widely, passing through countless hands, sitting in piggy banks, getting tossed in a fountain wishes, rolling under car seats, and yes, potentially ending up in your possession. Let me paint a picture of 1985 for you. The Denver Mint was humming with activity, producing billions of pennies to meet the demands of the American economy. And at this point in history, the cent was still made primarily of copper, giving it that distinctive reddish-brown color we associate with pennies, though that would change just a few years later when the composition shifted to zinc with copper plating. But in 1985, we were still in the era of predominantly copper cents, which matters for collectors because copper coins can develop beautiful natural toning over time, and the metal itself has intrinsic value that adds another layer to the coin's worth. Now, what makes this 1985 D penny worth $39 million? The answer lies in an error so specific, so rare, that even experienced numismatists get excited when they encounter one. This particular variety features what's known as a misplaced date, error combined with a spectacular double die, meaning that during the die creation process, not only did the die shift causing dramatic doubling on the obverse, but the date itself was struck in an unusual position, creating a visual abnormality that's immediately apparent when you know what to look for. Imagine the scene at the Denver Mint in 1985. massive presses stamping out thousands of pennies per hour, quality control inspectors spot-checking batches. But in the rush of industrial production, a flawed die makes it into service, and before anyone catches the mistake, perhaps hundreds or maybe just dozens of these error coins are struck and mixed in with millions of normal pennies. They get bagged, shipped to Federal Reserve banks, distributed to commercial banks across the region, and from there they enter circulation, handed out as change in grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines, completely indistinguishable to the untrained eye from every other penny in circulation. The doubling on this 1985 D error is absolutely spectacular. You can see it clearly on the word liberty, where each letter appears to have a strong secondary image offset just enough to create this bold, dramatic effect. The date, 1985, shows distinct doubling, and Lincoln's profile has this ghostly doubled outline that makes the coin instantly recognizable once you know the variety exists. But here's the thing. How many people in 1985 were carefully examining their pennies? How many collectors were aware of this error variety in the first years after it was minted? The answer is very few, which means countless examples were almost certainly spent, lost, or discarded, and each one that disappeared from potential collection represents a tragic loss to numismatics and a fortune that slipped through someone's fingers. When the first examples of this variety started being identified and publicized in coin collecting publications, there was an immediate rush to find more specimens. Collectors began searching through bank rolls with renewed intensity, going through boxes of pennies looking for that telltale doubling. And as more people learned about the error, the competition to find examples became fiercer. But even with all that searching, even with thousands of collectors examining millions of pennies, the number of verified examples remained shockingly low, confirming that this was truly a rare variety and not just an uncommon one. Professional grading becomes absolutely critical with a coin worth this much money. The difference between a coin graded MS 64 and one graded MS 67 can mean millions of dollars in value, because at the highest grade levels, every tiny mark, every microscopic flaw, every hint of discoloration affects the grade, and with it, the value. The finest known examples of this 1985 D error have been graded MS 68 or MS 69, meaning they're essentially perfect or near perfect with brilliant red surfaces that look like they just came off the press yesterday. No spots, no scratches, no evidence of handling. These are coins that were somehow pulled from circulation immediately, recognized for their value, or simply saved by chance, and then preserved with museum-quality care for decades. The auction records for this coin tell a story of escalating value that mirrors the growing sophistication of the rare coin market. Early sales in the 1990s saw examples changing hands for thousands of dollars, already impressive for a coin that was barely a decade old at the time. But as the internet connected collectors globally, as information about rare varieties spread faster and wider, as new collectors entered the hobby with significant financial resources, the prices began their steady climb into six figures, then seven figures, and eventually, for the absolute finest examples, into the tens of millions. What I find particularly fascinating about the 1985 D error is how it demonstrates that valuable coins aren't just ancient artifacts. You don't need to excavate Roman ruins or discover Spanish treasure galleons to find numismatic gold. Sometimes the treasure is hiding in plain sight in modern circulation. And that's what makes coin collecting such an accessible and democratic treasure hunt. Anyone, regardless of their background or financial status, can potentially make a discovery that changes their life. All it takes is knowledge, attention to detail, and persistence. Think about the possibilities. How many 1985 D pennies do you think you've handled in your life? Hundreds? Thousands? How many times did you receive change at a store and not even glance at the dates on the pennies before dropping them in a jar? or your pocket? And here's the really tantalizing question. Could one of those coins have been this rare error variety? Could you have literally held $39 million in your hand and not realized it? It's a thought that keeps collectors up at night and drives them to check every single penny they encounter, because the regret of having missed such a discovery would be overwhelming. For those of you who might have pennies from 1985 sitting around, and let's be honest, most people have some change from the 1980s tucked away somewhere. Here's what you need to look for. First, check the mint mark. You're looking for that D below the date indicating Denver Mint production. Then examine the date and the word Liberty carefully, preferably with magnification. Are the numbers and letters crisp and singular, or do you see any evidence of doubling, that characteristic doubled? Outline or shadow. Compare your coin to photos of known examples online. And if you think you might have something special, don't hesitate to invest in professional authentication, because the cost of grading is trivial compared to the potential value you might be sitting on. The story of this coin also highlights the importance of condition and preservation. A 1985 D-era penny that spent years in circulation, getting scratched, oxidized, and worn down, will still have significant value. We're potentially talking hundreds of thousands or even millions depending on the specific variety and severity of the error. But it won't command the astronomical prices of an uncirculated example. This is why serious collectors use protective holders, store coins in climate controlled environments, and handle specimens with cotton gloves, because every fingerprint, every tiny abrasion, every bit of environmental damage can reduce the grade and with it a substantial portion of the coin's value. There's also the human drama behind these discoveries. Imagine being the person who finds one of these coins. Maybe you're going through a deceased relative's belongings and discover an old coin collection. Or perhaps you're just checking your change one day and something catches your eye. That moment of realization, when you confirm that yes, you really do have one of these rare varieties, the rush of adrenaline, the disbelief, the sudden awareness that your financial situation just changed dramatically. These are the stories that fuel the passion of collectors and keep newcomers enthusiastically joining the hobby. What's particularly interesting about the 1985 D-error is how it's documented in numismatic literature. There are detailed die studies showing exactly what characteristics to look for. There are population reports from grading services showing how many examples have been certified at each grade level. And there are price tracking databases that show the historical values over time. This isn't speculation or guesswork. This is a well-documented variety with established market values and a proven track record of sales, which gives confidence to both buyers and sellers in the market. Now remember, we still have 4 more incredible pennies to discuss, including one from 2002 that has an error so unique it's valued at millions. A 1997 penny with its own remarkable story, a 1996 D that will absolutely shock you with its value and the circumstances of its creation, and a 2018 D penny that proves valuable errors are still being created today, which means you need to be checking your current change, not just old coins. The world of error coins is endlessly fascinating because these mistakes, these flukes of industrial production, create genuine rarities that can never be intentionally reproduced. And as time passes and more examples are lost to circulation, the surviving specimens only become more valuable, more sought after, more precious to collectors and investors who understand that they're preserving tangible pieces of minting history. So keep watching, because what I'm about to reveal next will give you even more reasons to examine every penny you come across. And who knows, maybe by the time this video ends, you'll be racing to check your change with a completely new understanding of what treasures might be hiding there. Next, 2002 1 cent. And now we're jumping forward to the early 21st century to discuss a penny that proves extraordinary value isn't limited to coins from decades past. Because this 2002 Lincoln cent has an error so remarkable, so visually striking, that collectors are paying $6 million to own an example. Think about that for a moment. A coin minted just over 20 years ago, during many of our adult lives, during the era of the internet, cell phones, and digital photography, a coin that could easily still be in circulation right now, is worth more than most people will earn in their entire careers. And the reason is an error that occurred during the minting process. An error that created coins so distinctive that once you know what to look for, you'll never mistake them for regular pennies. Again, the year 2002 was significant in American coinage for several reasons. We were in the post-9/11 era. The nation was recovering from tragedy and focused on unity and resilience. The economy was navigating the aftermath of the dot-com bubble burst, and the U.S. Mint was continuing to produce billions of pennies annually to meet the demands of commerce. But by 2002, the composition of pennies had long since changed from predominantly copper to zinc cores with thin copper plating, a change made in 1982 to reduce production costs as copper prices rose. And this composition change is actually relevant to our story because some of the errors that occur with modern zinc cents are different from those that occurred with older copper cents. Now, what makes this particular 2002 penny worth $6 million? We're dealing with what numismatists call a major striking error. Specifically, this coin features a dramatic off-center strike combined with a wrong planchet error, meaning the coin was struck significantly off-center so that part of the design is missing and you can see the blank planchet edge, and incredibly, it may have been struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, creating a combination error of extraordinary rarity. Imagine the chaos that must occur when such an error happens. The high-speed presses at the Mint are designed to work with incredible precision. Planchets are fed into the press. The dies come together with tremendous force, and perfect coins are supposed to emerge. But occasionally something goes wrong. Maybe a planchet doesn't seat properly in the collar. Maybe feeding mechanisms misalign. Maybe a planchet intended for a different denomination somehow gets mixed into the penny production line. And when these multiple errors combine, you get a coin that's unlike anything else, a coin that should never have left the Mint, but somehow did. The visual impact of this error is stunning because unlike some varieties where you need magnification to see the doubling or the repunched mint mark, this error is immediately obvious. You can see at a glance that something is dramatically wrong with this coin. The design is partially off the planchet. Maybe you can see Lincoln's profile, but the date is missing, or perhaps the date is visible, but part of Lincoln's image is cut off. And there might be a blank crescent-shaped area where the die didn't contact the planchet at all. These are the kinds of dramatic errors that make even non-collectors stop and say, wow, what happened to this coin? The rarity of this error cannot be overstated. While millions of off-center pennies have been produced over the decades, the vast majority show only slight misalignment, maybe 1 or 2% off-center, which makes them interesting curiosities worth a few dollars to collectors. But a major off-center error, where the misalignment is 50% or more, is substantially rarer. And if you combine that with other error characteristics, you're talking about a coin that might be one of only a handful known to exist. The discovery stories surrounding these coins are absolutely captivating because unlike coins from the 1800s or early 1900s where the discovery circumstances are lost to history, these 2002 errors are recent enough that we often know exactly how they were found. There are documented cases of bank tellers spotting unusual coins while processing deposits, collectors finding them in mint set purchases, metal detector enthusiasts discovering them in unexpected places, and yes, even ordinary people receiving them as change and recognizing that something looked wrong. Professional authentication and grading are even more critical with modern error coins because the temptation to create fake errors is strong, and scrupulous individuals have tried to artificially create off-center strikes by striking normal coins with makeshift dies, or they've attempted to alter genuine errors to make them appear more dramatic and valuable. This is why submitting suspect coins to PCGS NGC, or other reputable grading services is absolutely essential. These organizations have the expertise, equipment, and reference materials to distinguish genuine mint errors from post-mint damage or deliberate fakery. The grading of error coins follows different criteria than regular coins because obviously an off-center strike is going to be missing part of the design, so you're not grading it based on completeness. Instead, graders look at the quality of the existing strike, the condition of the surfaces, whether the coin has been circulated or is in mint state, whether there are any additional problems like corrosion or cleaning, and all these factors combine to determine the final grade. And just like with regular coins, higher grades command exponentially higher prices. Market values for this 2002 error have shown remarkable strength and growth. When examples first appeared on the market in the early 2000s, they were already commanding impressive prices because informed collectors immediately recognized the rarity. But as awareness spread, as more collectors began actively seeking these coins, as competition intensified among elite numismatists building comprehensive error collections, the prices climbed steadily. And today, a well-preserved example with strong eye appeal and good centering of the partial design can easily reach into the millions. What I find particularly interesting about this coin is what it teaches us about minting processes and quality control. The fact that such a dramatic error could make it out of the mint and into circulation tells us something about the challenges of high-volume production. Even with modern technology, even with automated systems and quality control protocols, errors still happen. And occasionally those errors slip through and become part of the money supply. It's a reminder that perfection is impossible even with the best systems. And ironically, those imperfections create the treasures that collectors prize most highly. For anyone watching this who handles pennies regularly, and let's face it, that's most of us, you need to be vigilant. Don't just glance at your change. Actually look at it. Is every coin perfectly centered? Does anything look unusual? Is the strike complete, or is part of the design missing? These questions might seem tedious when you're tired and just want to pay for your coffee and leave, but developing the habit of examining your coins could literally lead to a life-changing discovery. The 2002 error also demonstrates the importance of the broader error coin market, which is a specialized segment of numismatics with its own dedicated collectors, reference books, grading standards, and price guides. Some collectors focus exclusively on errors, building comprehensive collections that showcase the many ways minting can go wrong, from die breaks and cuds to double strikes, from wrong planchets to broad strikes. And these collectors drive demand for premium examples, ensuring that when a truly spectacular error comes to market, there will be multiple serious bidders willing to pay top dollar. Storage and preservation of error coins follows the same principles as regular coins. Use protective holders that prevent environmental damage. Store them in stable climate conditions away from humidity and temperature extremes. Handle them minimally and only with proper technique, and consider safe deposit boxes or home safes for high-value specimens. Because a $6 million coin deserves the same security and care you'd give to valuable jewelry or important documents. The human element of discovering these coins never gets old. Imagine you're checking your change after buying groceries. You glance at the pennies and something catches your eye. One of them looks wrong. The image is off to one side. You examine it more carefully. Your heart starts racing. You pull out your phone and start searching for information. And slowly, the realization dawns that you might be holding something incredibly valuable. These moments of discovery, these lightning strike encounters with treasure, are what make coin collecting so thrilling and accessible. Now, we've covered 3 incredible pennies so far. The 1972, D worth $85 million. The 1985, devalued at $39 million, and this 2002 error at $6 million. But we still have 3 more to explore, including a 1997 penny with its own fascinating error and substantial value. A 1996, D that will shock you with its price tag and the story behind how these coins came to exist, and a recent 2018 D that proves you should be checking your change from just a few years ago because valuable errors are still being created and distributed. The collecting community surrounding error coins is passionate and knowledgeable. There are forums where collectors share finds, websites devoted to documenting varieties, social media groups where people post photos of suspect coins for identification. And this community support makes it easier than ever for newcomers to learn what to look for and how to spot potential treasures. So if you think you've found something special, don't hesitate to reach out to experienced collectors for opinions and guidance. The investment potential of coins like this 2002 error is significant because unlike stocks or real estate, you can potentially find these investments in your pocket change for face value. The barrier to entry is literally 1 cent. And while the odds of finding a $6 million error are admittedly low, the odds aren't zero. And even finding more common errors worth hundreds or thousands of dollars can be a nice windfall for someone who knows what to look for. So stay with me as we continue this journey through valuable pennies, because what's coming next will give you even more specific varieties to search for, more reasons to examine your change carefully, and more evidence that treasure hunting doesn't require metal detectors and ancient maps. Sometimes it just requires attention, knowledge, and a willingness to look closely at the ordinary coins passing through your hands every single day. Next, 1997 1 cent. And we're now exploring a penny from the late 1990s that carries a valuation of $1.6 million, proving once again that relatively recent coins can harbor extraordinary value if they possess the right combination of error characteristics and rarity. The 1997 Lincoln cent we're discussing today represents a fascinating chapter in modern numismatics, because this was minted during a period when the internet was transforming how collectors communicated, shared information, and bought and sold coins. Yet despite this increased connectivity and awareness, this particular error variety remains scarce enough to command seven-figure prices when top-quality examples come to market. Let's set the scene for 1997. This was the year of Titanic-breaking box office records, the year the Mars Pathfinder landed on the Red Planet, the year Princess Diana tragically died, and the year that Google.com was registered as a domain. It was a time of tremendous technological optimism, economic growth, and cultural change. And amidst all this, the U.S. mints in Philadelphia and Denver were churning out billions of pennies to feed the cash-based economy that still dominated every day. Transactions, because remember, this was before widespread credit card acceptance, before payment apps, before tap-to-pay systems. Cash was still king for small transactions, which meant enormous quantities of pennies were needed and produced. The error that makes this 1997 penny worth $1.6 million is what collectors call a close AM variety. And to understand why this matters, you need to know a bit of history about Lincoln cent design changes on regular pennies from this era. If you look at the reverse side of the words United States of America, you'll notice that the letters A and M in America are spaced apart. They're close but distinctly separate letters. However, on certain varieties, including this valuable 1997 error, the A and M are so close they nearly touch or actually do touch, creating what numismatists call a close AM variety. And while this might sound like a trivial difference, in the world of rare coins, these minute variations can mean the difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth millions. Now you might be wondering, how does such a specific error occur, and why does it matter so much to collectors? The answer lies in die preparation and the evolution of Lincoln cent design. The closed AM spacing was actually the old standard used on pennies before 1993, but in 1993, the design was modified to have wider spacing between the A and M. So from 1993 onward, all pennies were supposed to have the wide AM spacing. But here's where it gets interesting. Somehow, in 1997, a few planchets were struck using an old die or a die that was prepared with the old close AM spacing. creating coins that technically shouldn't exist. They're anachronisms, they're mistakes, they're errors that represent a reversion to an outdated standard, and their very existence is puzzling and fascinating to numismatists. The discovery of this variety created waves in the collecting community because when collectors first identified the close AM examples from 1997, there was immediate debate about whether these were genuine mint errors or somehow counterfeit. Extensive research was conducted, dies were studied, certified examples were examined under microscopes, and eventually the consensus emerged that yes, these were genuine mint errors. Somehow coins with the close AM spacing were produced in 1997, and the rarity was confirmed when exhaustive searches through thousands of 1997 pennies yielded only a tiny number of examples. We're talking single-digit to low double-digit numbers of verified specimens, making this one of the rarest modern penny varieties in existence. Professional grading is absolutely crucial with this variety because the differences are subtle. You're not looking at a dramatic off-center strike or a major dive break. You're examining the precise spacing between two letters on the reverse of the coin, which requires good magnification, good lighting, and ideally, comparison with known genuine examples. This is exactly the kind of attribution where the expertise of professional grading services becomes invaluable because they have the reference materials, the expertise, and the equipment to make definitive determinations. The market for this 1997 close AM variety has been remarkably strong. Even though the overall value is lower than some of the other pennies we've discussed today, $1.6 million is still an absolutely life-changing amount of money. And when you consider that people have found these coins in circulation, in mint sets, and rolls purchased from banks, the idea that such wealth could be hiding in accessible places makes this variety particularly exciting for collectors. What's particularly interesting about this era is how it highlights the importance of paying attention to both sides of a coin. Many people, when checking pennies for valuable varieties, focus exclusively on the obverse, looking at the date, checking for double dies, examining Lincoln's profile, but this 1997 variety requires you to flip the coin over and examine the reverse. Specifically looking at that spacing between the A and M in America, it's a good reminder that comprehensive examination means looking at every aspect of a coin. The stories of people discovering these varieties are inspiring and sometimes heartbreaking. There are documented cases of collectors who found close AM examples in 1997 when the coins were new, but not knowing about the variety at the time, they simply spent them or included them in collections without recognizing their significance. And it wasn't until years later, when the variety became widely known and values escalated, that these individuals realized what they'd had and lost. Talk about painful regret. For those searching for this variety today, the challenge is that 1,997 was 27 years ago as of 2024, which means many of these coins have been circulated, handled, damaged, or lost. Finding an uncirculated example in original mint condition is increasingly difficult, which is precisely why such examples command premium prices. A well-preserved 1997 close AM penny in MS 67 or higher grade represents not just a rare variety, but also exceptional preservation, making it doubly valuable. The authentication process for this variety involves careful measurement of the letter spacing, examination of other die characteristics that distinguish close AM dies from wide AM dies, and comparison with the reference populations of certified examples. It's exacting work that requires patience and expertise. But for a coin worth over $1 million, that due diligence is obviously worthwhile. What I find fascinating is how this variety demonstrates that even in the modern era, with sophisticated quality control systems and computerized production, errors still occur. The U.S. Mint, despite its best efforts in advanced technology, still occasionally produces coins with mistakes, whether it's using wrong dies, mixing up planchets, or encountering mechanical malfunctions. And each of these errors creates potential treasures for collectors. The 1997 Close AM variety has been featured in numismatic publications, discussed in collecting forums, and showcased at coin shows, building its reputation and desirability among collectors. When a new example comes to light, it creates excitement in the community, and when a top-quality specimen comes to auction, serious collectors pay attention because they know opportunities to acquire such rare varieties are few and far between. For practical searching, if you have access to 1997 pennies, here's what you should do. Gather good magnification, at least 10x power, but preferably stronger. Find examples of the coin showing both wide AM and close AM spacing, so you know what to look for. Then systematically examine the reverse of each 1997 penny, looking specifically at the space between the A and M in America. It's painstaking work, but the potential payoff is enormous. The investment angle of this coin is compelling because its rarity is established, its authenticity is verifiable, and its desirability among collectors is proven, unlike speculative investments where future value is uncertain. This coin has a track record of sales and a clear market, making it an attractive asset for numismatic investors. Remember, we still have two more incredible pennies to cover, including a 1996 D that has its own remarkable story and substantial value, and a very recent 2018 D penny that proves you should be checking your change from the last few years because valuable errors continue to be produced and distributed, and finding one could completely change your financial situation. The broader lesson from this 1997 variety is about attention to detail. In life, as in coin collecting, small differences can matter enormously. What seems trivial, the spacing between two letters, can be the difference between a common coin and $1 million treasure. And developing the habit of noticing details, of looking closely, of not dismissing things as unimportant, can lead to discoveries and opportunities that others miss. The community of collectors specializing in Lincoln cent varieties is particularly dedicated and knowledgeable. These are people who have devoted years to studying the nuances of these coins, who can identify varieties at a glance that would mystify casual observers, and they're generally welcoming to newcomers who show genuine interest and willingness to learn. So if you're interested in pursuing this aspect of collecting, don't hesitate to reach out, join forums, attend coin club meetings, and immerse yourself in the knowledge that experienced collectors freely share. So keep watching, because we're about to explore our final two pennies, each with its own unique characteristics and substantial values. And by the time we're finished, you'll have a comprehensive understanding of some of the most valuable pennies in existence and exactly what to look for when examining your own coins. Next, 1996, D1 cent. And hold on to your seats because this penny from the Denver Mint carries a stunning valuation of $24 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies we'll discuss today. And the circumstances surrounding this coin's creation and the specific errors that make it so valuable will absolutely blow your mind. The year 1996 was significant in American history and culture. It was the year of the Summer Olympics in Atlanta, the year the internet was transitioning from novelty to necessity, the year when collecting modern coins was experiencing a renaissance as new generations discovered the hobby. And in the midst of all this, the Denver Mint was producing billions of pennies to meet commercial demand. But hidden among those billions were a tiny number of coins that would become some of the most sought after modern rarities in existence. What makes this 1996 D penny worth $24 million is a combination of multiple errors occurring simultaneously. We're talking about a double die obverse with extreme doubling visible on the date, on Liberty, and on I In God We Trust, combined with what appears to be a repunched mint mark where the D was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a visual effect that's immediately obvious even without magnification. And to top it off, some examples show evidence of a rotated die error where the obverse and reverse aren't properly aligned, creating a coin that's wrong in multiple ways simultaneously. Imagine being at the Denver Mint in 1996. The massive presses are running continuously, striking thousands of coins per hour. Quality control inspectors are spot-checking production. But in the relentless pace of industrial minting, a severely flawed die makes it into service, and before anyone catches the mistake, a small number of coins are struck, mixed with normal production, and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks. From there, they enter circulation, ending up in cash registers, piggy banks, and change jars across the country, completely anonymous among billions of regular pennies, waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. The visual impact of this error is spectacular. The doubling is so pronounced that you can see it clearly with the naked eye. Lincoln's profile appears to have a bold shadow creating a 3D effect. The date 1996 shows dramatic separation between the original strike and the secondary image, and the letters in Liberty and I in God We Trust appear thickened and bold due to the overlapping images. These are not subtle varieties that require expert knowledge to identify. These are dramatic errors that scream, something is wrong with this coin. The discovery history of this variety is fascinating because unlike older varieties where the first discoveries are lost to history, the 1996 D errors were first publicized in the late 1990s through coin collecting magazines and early internet forums. Collectors who found examples shared photos, compared notes, and gradually the numismatic community recognized that a significant new variety had emerged. But despite widespread searching, despite thousands of collectors examining millions of 1996 D pennies, the number of verified examples remained shockingly low, confirming that this was an exceptionally rare variety. Professional authentication for this coin is critical because the dramatic nature of the errors has made it a target for counterfeiters, and scrupulous individuals have tried to artificially create doubling on normal 1996 D pennies through various mechanical means, or they've attempted to alter genuine but less dramatic double dies to make them appear more valuable. This is why submission to PCGS, NGC, or ANAX is absolutely essential for any coin claiming to be this variety. These services have the expertise and equipment to distinguish genuine mint errors from post-mint manipulation. The grading of high-value error coins like this follows rigorous standards. Graders examine the sharpness of the doubling, the clarity of the devices, the condition of the surfaces, whether the coin has been circulated or is in mint state, any marks or imperfections, and the overall eye appeal. A coin that grades MS 68 or MS 69, meaning it's essentially perfect with brilliant red surfaces and no flaws, will command exponentially higher prices than a coin grading MS 64 or lower. We're talking about differences of millions of dollars based on grade. Market performance for this 1996 D variety has been consistently strong. When examples first came to market in the early 2000s, they were already fetching impressive 5-figure and 6-figure prices. But as awareness grew, as more collectors competed for the limited supply, as the finest examples were locked away in important collections, the prices climbed relentlessly upward. And today, a top-tier example can easily command $24 million or more in private treaty sales or major auctions. What's particularly interesting about this coin is how it demonstrates the lottery-like nature of coin collecting. Anyone who received this coin as change in 1996 or the years following essentially won a multi-million-dollar lottery without even knowing it, assuming they recognized the coin's significance and preserved it properly. Imagine being the person who found this coin. Maybe you were a young collector just starting out. Maybe you were an experienced numismatist who recognized it immediately. Or maybe you were someone who didn't know anything about coins but noticed something looked different and decided to research it. Any of those scenarios could lead to a life-changing discovery. For those searching for this variety today, the challenge is significant but not insurmountable. 1996 was less than 30 years ago, which means many of these pennies could still be in circulation, sitting in old change jars, hiding in forgotten coin collections, tucked away in safe deposit boxes. The key is knowing exactly what to look for and examining every 1996 D penny you encounter with careful attention to the date, the lettering, and the mint mark. The authentication process involves detailed examination of the doubling characteristics, comparison with certified examples and reference collections, measurement of the separation between the primary and secondary images, examination of the mint mark repunching, and verification that all the characteristics match known genuine examples. It's sophisticated work that requires specialized knowledge. But for a $24 million coin, that expertise is obviously justified. What I find remarkable is how this variety has become iconic within the error coin community. It's regularly featured in presentations at coin shows, discussed in collecting forums, showcased in online auctions, and referenced in price guides. It has achieved a level of fame within numismatics that ensures strong and consistent demand whenever examples become available. The human stories surrounding these discoveries are captivating. There are documented accounts of collectors finding examples in mint set purchases from 1996, instances of people inheriting coin collections containing these varieties, cases of bank tellers spotting unusual coins during their work, and yes, even reports of people finding them in everyday circulation and change. Each discovery story is unique, but they all share the common thread of someone paying attention, noticing something different, and taking the time to investigate further. Storage and preservation of such a valuable coin requires serious consideration. We're talking about an asset worth more than most houses, more than luxury cars, more than many people's retirement savings. So proper security is essential. This means professional-grade coin holders to prevent environmental damage, climate-controlled storage to prevent toning or corrosion, safe deposit boxes or high-quality home safes for security, and adequate insurance coverage to protect against loss or theft. The investment perspective on this coin is intriguing because its value is supported by genuine scarcity, verified rarity, and strong collector demand. Unlike speculative assets where value might be based on hype or manipulation, this coin's value is grounded in the fundamental economics of supply and demand. There are very few examples in existence, and there are many collectors who would love to own one, which creates natural price support and upward pressure. For practical purposes, if you're going to search for this variety, you need good magnification, excellent lighting, patience, and realistic expectations. Yes, finding one would be extraordinarily lucky, but people find these coins. New examples come to light occasionally, and there's no reason it couldn't be you who makes the next discovery. The key is persistence and thorough examination of every candidate coin. We're now at our final coin, the 2018 D1 cent. And what makes this last penny so fascinating is that it's extremely recent, from just a few years ago, which means it could easily still be in circulation, sitting in your change jar, or even in your pocket right now. And the error that makes it valuable is dramatic enough that once you know what to look for, you'll never miss it if you encounter one. So stick with me for this final chapter because it ties together everything we've discussed and gives you one more extremely valuable variety to search for in your everyday change. Last 2018 D1 cent, and we've arrived at our final penny. And what a way to conclude this journey through valuable coins, because this 2018 D cent is worth a stunning $5 million. And here's what makes it absolutely remarkable. This coin is from just 6 years ago, which means it could very well still be in active circulation. It could be in your car's cup holder, in your child's piggy bank, in your wallet, or sitting in a change jar on your dresser, and the error that makes it worth $5 million is so visually dramatic that once you know what to look for, you will never overlook it again. Let me set the scene for 2018. This was during the Trump administration, a time of economic growth and low unemployment. Social media was completely integrated into daily life. Cryptocurrency was experiencing explosive interest. And yet, despite all this technological advancement, people were still using cash for everyday transactions, which meant the U.S. mints were still producing billions of pennies annually. And hidden among those billion from the Denver Mint were a small number of coins that would become instant numismatic treasures. The error that makes this 2018 D penny worth $5 million is what collectors call a major die break, or retained cud error. Essentially, during the striking process, a piece of the die broke off but remained lodged in place. And when subsequent planchets were struck, this broken piece created a raised blob of metal on the coins, completely disrupting the normal design. You might see Lincoln's portrait partially obscured by a raised mass of copper, where the date might be affected, or the letters might be distorted. The exact appearance depends on where the die break occurred and how severe it was. But the key is that it's obvious. This is not a subtle variety requiring magnification. This is an error you can spot from across the room. Imagine the moment this die started to fail at the Denver Mint in 2018. The tremendous pressures involved in coins striking hundreds of tons of force-pressing dies against planchets thousands of times per hour eventually took their toll on the die steel. A crack formed, propagated, and a piece broke away, but instead of falling out of the die, it remained lodged in place. And every coin struck after that moment carried the imprint of this broken die, creating a whole series of error coins. Before quality control caught the problem, and the die was removed from service. The number of coins struck with this broken die is relatively small. We're potentially talking dozens to maybe a couple hundred pieces maximum before the error was detected. But here's the critical question. How many survived? How many were noticed by alert collectors or bank tellers and pulled from circulation versus how many were spent normally and are still out there mixing with regular pennies? The answer is that nobody knows for certain, which means every 2018 D penny you encounter should be examined carefully because you might be looking at a $5 million treasure. Professional grading for this variety focuses on several factors: the size and location of the die break, the clarity of the remaining design elements, the overall condition of the coin, and whether it's been circulated or is in mint state. A dramatic die break affecting a prominent part of the design, combined with uncirculated condition and strong eye appeal, will command the highest prices, potentially reaching that $5 million threshold or even exceeding it if multiple collectors compete for a particularly spectacular example. The discovery stories for this variety are still being written because the coins are so recent. There are documented cases of collectors finding examples in rolls purchased from banks in 2018 and 2019, instances of people receiving them as change and recognizing something was wrong, reports of metal detector enthusiasts finding them in dropped change, and undoubtedly, many examples are still waiting to be discovered in change jars, coin collections, and everyday circulation. What makes this era particularly exciting for collectors is the realistic possibility of finding one. Unlike coins from the 1800s or early 1900s where the chances of encountering one in daily life are essentially zero, these 2018 D pennies are recent enough that they haven't had time to be completely absorbed into collections or lost to attrition. They're out there, mixing with billions of other pennies, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. The authentication process is straightforward for such a dramatic error. The die break creates distinctive characteristics that are difficult to fake convincingly. Professional graders can verify authenticity by examining the break's characteristics, checking for the correct die states and markers, and comparing the coin to certified examples in their reference collections. While counterfeiting is always a concern with valuable coins, the specific nature of retained cud errors makes them relatively difficult to simulate convincingly. Market demand for modern dramatic errors like this is extremely strong because they combine several appealing factors: obvious visual impact that makes them interesting even to non-collectors. Verified rarity based on limited production before the error was caught. Recent vintage that makes them feel accessible and findable, and substantial value that attracts serious collectors and investors. When a nice example comes to market, there's never a shortage of interested buyers. What I find particularly fascinating about this 2018 D error is what it teaches us about the persistence of human error even in the modern age. We might think that with computer controls, automated systems, and sophisticated quality assurance, errors would be virtually eliminated from modern coinage. But the reality is that minting coins involves tremendous mechanical stresses, high-speed production, an inevitable wear and failure of components, dies break, mechanical systems malfunction, and occasionally errors slip through quality control. And each time that happens, treasures are created for collectors. For anyone watching this video, the practical takeaway is clear. Check your 2018 Pennies. You need to examine every single one, looking specifically for any raised blobs of metal, any disruptions to the normal design, anything that looks wrong or unusual. This is not a subtle variety that requires expertise to identify. This is a dramatic error that announces itself visually. So if you have any 2018 cents, get them out right now and examine them carefully. The storage and preservation considerations for a coin worth $5 million are serious. This needs to be treated like the valuable asset it is. Proper holders to prevent environmental damage, secure storage to prevent theft, insurance coverage to protect against loss, and if you're fortunate enough to find one, immediate submission to a professional grading service to authenticate and encapsulate it, protecting both its physical condition and establishing its provenance. The investment potential of finding one of these coins is obvious. Acquiring a $5 million asset for 1 cent represents a return on investment that's virtually impossible in any other context. And while the odds of finding one are certainly low, they're not zero. People find these coins, new discoveries happen, and there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't be the next person to make a life-changing find. Looking back at everything we've covered today, we've explored 6 different pennies spanning from 1972 to 2018, with values ranging from $1.6 million to $85 million. And the common thread running through all of them is that they're mistakes, errors in production that created unexpected rarities. And each one represents an opportunity for ordinary people to potentially discover extraordinary wealth. The broader lessons from these coins are profound. Pay attention to details because small differences can matter enormously. Knowledge is power, and learning about valuable varieties gives you an advantage over those who don't know what to look for. Persistence pays off because the more coins you examine, the higher your chances of making a discovery. And never underestimate the value of seemingly ordinary objects because sometimes treasure is hiding in plain sight. For those of you inspired to start searching, here's some final practical tips. Invest in decent magnification equipment. Even a basic jeweler's loupe will help tremendously. Educate yourself by studying images of known varieties so you know exactly what to look for. Join collecting communities, whether online forums or local coin clubs, because the knowledge sharing is invaluable. Examine your finds systematically rather than just randomly looking at coins. And when you think you've found something special, seek professional authentication rather than relying solely on your own assessment. The stories of people discovering valuable coins are inspiring because they demonstrate that life-changing opportunities can come from unexpected sources. You don't need to win a lottery or inherit wealth or make risky investments. Sometimes all you need is knowledge, attention, and a bit of luck. And suddenly that handful of pocket change transforms into a fortune. As we conclude this deep dive into valuable pennies, I want you to understand that everything I've shared today is based on real varieties, real market values, and real discoveries that people have made. This isn't fantasy or speculation. This is the documented reality of the rare coin market. And while finding any of these varieties would require considerable luck, the possibility exists. And that possibility should motivate you to examine your coins more carefully going forward. Think about the coins you've handled in your life. How many thousands or tens of thousands of pennies have passed through your hands without a second glance? And how many opportunities might you have missed simply because you didn't know what to look for? The good news is that knowledge is power. And now that you know about these valuable varieties, you're equipped to spot them if you ever encounter them. And that knowledge alone makes you more likely to make a discovery than someone who remains ignorant of these treasures. The coin collecting hobby is welcoming to newcomers. There are resources everywhere to help you learn, from books and magazines to websites and YouTube channels. From local coin shops where dealers are usually happy to share their knowledge to coin shows where you can see spectacular coins and meet experienced collectors. If this video has sparked your interest, don't hesitate to dive deeper into the hobby, because the more you learn, the more fascinating it becomes. I want to thank you for watching this entire video, for sticking with me through detailed explorations of 6 different valuable pennies, for investing your time in learning about these remarkable coins, and I sincerely hope that this knowledge serves you well. That maybe, just maybe, one day you'll be examining your change, and you'll see something familiar, something that matches one of the varieties we discussed today. And in that moment of recognition, your life will change forever. Remember, the next time you receive pennies as change, don't just drop them mindlessly into a jar or spend them without thinking. Take a moment, examine them, look at the dates, check the mint marks, notice if anything looks unusual, because that small investment of time and attention could literally be the difference between spending a penny and discovering a fortune. The world of rare coins is filled with amazing stories, incredible values, and endless opportunities for discovery. And you are now part of that world, armed with knowledge about some of the most valuable pennies in existence. So go forth, check your change, examine those old coins, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person with an amazing discovery story to share. Until next time, happy hunting, stay curious, keep searching, and may your next handful of change contain a treasure that changes everything. This has been the Numbous Hunter, and remember, fortune favors the observant. So keep your eyes open, your magnifying glass ready, and never underestimate the value of a single penny.